Good everybody, and welcome to the first ever completely online trimester orientation for the Division of Health, Engineering, Computing and Science. My name is Joseph Henderson, and today I'm going to run you through a bunch of info that will hopefully make your transition to tertiary education just that little bit easier. A quick point before we begin, so while I can't hear or see you, you should have access to a chat function on your end, so if you did have any questions, please feel free to put them in there. You should have an option for it to be public or private. So if the question you're asking you think is going to be broadly applicable to everyone, feel free to put it in the public. But if it's sort of more specific to just you, put it in privately and we can answer it just back to you. We'll answer the majority of the questions at the end, but you don't need to wait until then to ask them, so just put them in when you're good and ready. So with that said, let's get things moving. So, exciting news to start. Just by being here today, you're in the draw for one of these very stylish University of Waikato hoodies. So you don't have to do anything, you are just already in the draw, so fingers crossed. So what we want to talk about first is sort of the distinction between the division, which I would have mentioned at the intro, and the schools. So they'll both be relevant to you, but what we want to do here is make the distinction how they're relevant and what you would access each for. So to start with, the division is the overarching structure which contains the Huataki Waiora School of Health, the School of Engineering, the School of Computing and Mathematical Sciences, and the School of Science. So we refer to it as HECS short, so if you hear HECS, it's referring to the division rather than the schools. So, starting with the division, which is where I personally sit, so there's me, along with Hannah and Courtney, who together we're the division registrars. So you'll likely become very familiar with us over the course of your studies. And what we're here to do primarily is to help you with the enrolment side of your student journey. But with that said, we're sort of a first contact point for any questions you might have. So yes, primarily we'll be looking at degree planning, changing your enrolment, changing your degrees, issues that arise during your study. So that's the registrars. So in general, the easiest way to get in touch with us is via email. There we go, the email's just been put in the chat. So yeah, if it's a short question, email's easiest. You can also call us. If you were wanting a bit more time, your inquiry is a bit more involved, you can book appointments to see us, which can be done through this online form here or via the faculty reception. So we'll show you what that is a little bit later on, but the form is the easiest way to do it. And so appointments 20 minutes, can be by phone or Zoom. They can also be in person, but obviously with this trimester being a little unique in terms of it being more online than in a normal year, phone or Zoom. But if you're on campus, by all means, you can indicate that you want to come in and see us at FG. So also within the division sit our student success coordinators. So they are able to help you primarily with things sort of like Moodle, study skills, special consideration, withdrawal missed assignments, and extra study help. So so less so issues with the enrolment itself, more once you're within your papers, the semester started and you think you might need a bit of extra tutorial help or something like that. Liwa and Jody are the two people to get in touch with there. So Liwa is based in Hamilton, and Jody is based in Tauranga. So while, so at this point we sort of want to stress that throughout your student journey with us, it's likely that you'll come across some challenges. Likely that you'll come across some challenges, and that's completely normal. And we, in 99.9% of cases, can assist you. It's just we need you to tell us that you need our help. So things that you might need help with are incredibly variable, and who the person on our end is that will eventually help you with that is also pretty variable. But yeah, we can't assist if we don't know it's a problem. So yeah, so just here is a sort of a list of different outlets to ask for support. Sorry. So firstly, we've got the student success coordinators. So that was Lewa and Jody, who we just looked at previously. Case managers, which we'll get into a little bit later on. Senior tutors and lecturers. So that's that would primarily be for issues that arise within your papers. And depending on the scope of the issue would dictate which one of those you spoke with. But Eva would be able to help in the push come to shove. The division school staff. So the division staff in this case would be the registrars, who we just looked at earlier, myself included, and the school staff, who we will get to in a little bit. And then there's the broader university services, so the central services that sit outside the school or the division. And yeah, so common things that might need us to intervene on. So special considerations, that would be if you're having issues with an assignment, missed it for some reason beyond your control. There's a process for that. Withdrawing, sometimes that's what needs to happen. If things get a little out of hand, and we can assist with that as well. But there are also a lot of smaller interventions we can make prior to getting to that point. But again, that goes back to us needing to know. So the earlier we know there's a problem, the earlier we can intervene to hopefully get it sorted. So here's the map, just where the division office in Hamilton is based. So this is where the registrars and the student success coordinators are based, which is in FG Link. If you have a bunch of smaller screens to the side, you won't actually be able to see the image, but there's a zoom in of the FG Link building. It's a, looks like a cheese grater, so it's quite easy to find if you're on the Hamilton campus. So yeah, that's where we're based. And yeah, if you need to discuss your program study or anything else at all, make an appointment to see us, either in person there or via the form we looked at a little bit earlier. Tauranga staff are all based in the hub, which is just on the first floor of the city campus building. So yeah, so that's where you'd be able to see Jody or any of the other Tauranga support staff. So now we will just touch on some key dates. So lectures for your trimester papers will start on Monday. So hopefully you're all well aware of that at this point and ready to go. Tutorials and labs vary between schools. So we'll go into that in more detail a bit later on, but if you're in science or engineering, your labs and tutorials will begin next week as well. So just keep that in mind. And if you're in the school, to Huataki Waiora School of Health or School of Computing and Mathematical Sciences, yours will begin in week 2. But again, we'll go into that in a little more detail shortly. The next date is quite an important one. So the end of the second week is when you can change your papers without any sort of penalty. So while we like to think you'd be all enrolled in the papers that you want to do at the start, sometimes you might get into the first week of lectures or something like that and find actually this elective I picked I don't want to do. So yeah, provided you come to that realization before the end of the second week, we can change it. If you come to that realization about a compulsory paper, that becomes a more complicated conversation, but it's still one we should have early on in the piece. Yeah, so the end of the second week, although obviously the later you change a paper, the more you will have missed of the paper you're wanting to change into. So yeah, so if you did the first lecture and thought, yikes, I really don't want to do this paper, change at that point. Don't wait until the end of the second week and then have to play catch up on the paper that you've changed into. Yeah, so that's the end of the second week, so 26th of July. There's a teaching recess in the middle of the trimester. The only sort of important note around that is that it is a teaching recess, not a study recess. So you will likely still have work to do over that period. There just won't be tutorials or lectures or labs for that 2-week period. And then, at the end of the trimester, there'll be a study week, which will be before the 2-week period where there will be final tests. There won't be any formal exams this trimester, but there will, for a lot of papers, be still a final test, which will happen in the 2-week period after the 23rd of October. And throughout the year, particularly sort of towards the end of the trimester, is when we would start looking at your papers for next year, if you're not concluding your study this trimester. And so you keep an eye on your comms. We'll get in touch about that, and you'll be able to book in a time to see myself, Courtney, or Hannah to discuss what your program of study will look like for next year. So alluded to it earlier, so case management. So might sound sort of like a scary oversight sort of function, but that's really not its intention. Essentially, all this is a person who will be assigned to you, who is there to be a liaison or a source of advice for situations where you might not know what to do. So they will get in touch with you sort of in the first few weeks of the trimester. You don't need to do anything. It'll just more than likely be an email in the first instance, just introducing themselves and what they're, how you could get in touch with them. And you can engage with them as much or as little as you want to. So you don't have to, you could simply respond to the first inquiry and go, hey, I'm good, but I'll let you know if I need help. That said, you might want a bit more constant support, and they'll be able to help facilitate that if not provided themselves. So if you hear case management, that's what that's referring to. And again, if you're needing to reach out for help, that's often a good first point. So just keep that in mind. So earlier we've gone through the division. Now we'll just sort of briefly touch on what the individual schools do. So the respective school administrations help with things like paper information, application forms, so extensions, special consideration, graduate planners, access to labs or after hours access, or if you need to meet with the academic staff, lectures, etc., and that aren't directly involved in your papers. So the only other quick note about the schools is the schools oversee individual papers. So while you might be for instance, you might be doing a BSc in chemistry, but if you were doing Stats 111 as a paper, that would sit under the School of Computing and Mathematical Sciences because it's a statistics paper rather than the School of Science. But that information will be in your individual paper outlines, but it's just something to keep in mind. So the School of Computing and Mathematical Sciences, so the two administrators there are Rachel and Maria, and they are both based on the ground floor of G Block. The School of Engineering, so their administrators are Natalie and Mary, and they are on the second floor, of E Block. The School of Science, it's Gloria, Fiona and Vicky, and they are also on the second floor of E Block, directly across the corridor from the School of Engineering, so they're both quite easy to find. To Huataki Waiora School of Health, they are, I suppose, the separate entity here, and that they are on the other side of the campus in TT on the 6th floor, and Dean is the administrator up there that you'd be looking for. And Tauranga-based students, any school functions that we're referring to here in Tauranga would happen within the individual papers. So you wouldn't need to access the school offices in that sense. Just talk to your lectures tutors within the papers, and they'll advise you on any of those functions that you need to be following. So I touched on it earlier again, but lab allocations. So labs and tutorials often get used interchangeably, but this slide's particularly referring to the science papers. So labs start in week 1, so they will start next week, and you can sign up for them in Moodle from now. So if you haven't already engaged with that process, you should do it as soon as possible, just because, yeah, the way they're streamed, if you couldn't come on campus, for instance, there'll be a specific stream for the online occurrence, and you need to sort of engage with that so as you don't miss out. The sign-up process is the same for engineering, and those will also begin in week 1. But the computing mathematical sciences and health papers, their tutorials will begin in week 2. So there's, I suppose, a little less urgency in terms of signing up for the tutorials for those, but that will also be done through Moodle when it's available. Lab coats. So if you are a science student or engineering, you need a lab coat, more than likely. So this link here is where you sign up for that. And yeah, so the process is basically you order it all online. You don't order a specific size, you just put the order through online, you will get sent a receipt, and then you collect it from the science store, which is in F.G16, so that's F block, ground floor, room 16, but you can just the quickest way there is to just go to the FG reception, which we referred to earlier, and yeah, you present the receipt for collection. Same with Tauranga. But you can also, you don't have to have a University of Waikato one specifically, so a proper lab coat from anywhere will do. So they can also be purchased by Trade Me or NZ Safety. Yeah. So that's the lab coats. So now we want to get a bit more into subjects and degree structures. So since you're already here, you will be doing a degree and majoring in one of these subjects. So there's quite a few listed, and we're not necessarily going to run through all of them, but what we're wanting to get across here is that depending on your degree, so this I suppose does exclude our engineering and Bachelor of Health friends as well as the postgrad students, but if you're not doing one of those qualifications, you have a bit of flexibility within your degree to do more than one subject. So what we're just wanting to sort of get across here is that there are a range of related useful subjects that you could use to complement your degree. So yeah, adding data analytics or statistics to one of the science majors can only help, kind of thing. And with that said, there's also subjects outside of our division that might be useful, but yeah, preferably you stay within it. Yeah, but all we're really wanting to get across at this point is to think about your degree in totality and what you can do to sort of make it more valuable at the end. That said, electives, yeah, so actually let's move on to the degree structures really quickly. So this one here is an example of a fully prescribed degree. So in our case, this would be referring to the engineering qualification, so there'd be a Bachelor of Engineering with honours and the 2 streams of the Bachelor of Health. And also postgrad quals don't have the same subject availability. And you can sort of see here that all of the boxes have a specific reference. So you don't really get to pick which papers you're going to do beyond some program electives, which are papers from a specific list. But if we switch to what's a regular Bachelor of Science, you'll see that in the yellow there, we've got the major. So in this case, it's computer science. So the yellow papers there are the major, the black box is the compulsory papers, and the red boxes are electives. And the electives can be anything. So it might be that you want to touch on a whole bunch of niche interests you've always had and do a paper here or there in each of those. Or it might be that you just want to do more computer science. Either of those approaches are completely valid. But you could also potentially do a second major or 2 minors. And there's a range of subjects that can complement your primary one. So yeah, all we're sort of wanting to get across here is to have a bit of a think about your degree in total and what you could potentially do to add a bit more value to it. And yeah, if you did have some ideas or wanted to talk about that, that would be sort of a perfect example of what you would talk to myself or one of the other registrars about. So yeah, if you were wanting to follow up on that at all, that would be one situation where you could book via that appointment booking link or get in touch with us at FG. Class representatives. So each class you're in will have a class rep. So they're there to sort of help mediate relevant issues, pass on issues to the academic staff, or pass on, sort of act as an intermediary between the student body of the class and the lecturers or the paper conveners. It can be sort of viewed positively, and you can, sort of thing you can list on your CV, etc. And at 100 level, each class is one class rep per lab stream. So that's a little different to the other papers. And the volunteering for that will happen within the papers. So you just sort of engage during the first week if that's something you're interested in, and the lecturer will let you know how that process is going to play out in that specific paper. So wellbeing. So we've talked earlier about situations where you might need to reach out for some help. And while within the division and the schools, we're more than happy to help in any way we can. Sometimes you might need some, I suppose, a bit more specialist assistance. So the two resources listed here are examples of who you could go to. So the Student Health Centre is obviously anything medical. And the Student Counselling Service, which is sort of based at the Student Health Centre, would more follow the traditional sort of counselling, sort of mental health side of things. So they're both good resources to keep in the back of your mind in case you need them down the road. But again, if you weren't sure who to contact about this sort of thing, this is a situation where you could liaise with your case manager or someone within the division, and we can help facilitate that interaction as well. So again, it's just a matter of asking for help when you need it. Student clubs. So there are a range of student clubs within the schools within the division who can provide sort of valuable support. Often there's a more social aspect to the student clubs, but there are also more sort of proper functions. So they facilitate events, volunteering opportunities, general support, and often sort of networking / industry connections and events. So information about those individual clubs will sort of present itself to you over the next couple of weeks. So if you want to get involved, just follow the prompts that they give you. So here is the Hamilton campus. So we looked at a zoomed in image of it earlier, but this is the bigger version. So FG is where the division is based. And again, you can see it a bit more clearly this time. The big cheese grater, that is where you would find us. And it's quite small, but if you look sort of a straight line up from where we're based, and there's a speech bubble that says Education, Health, Sport and Human Performance. The TT building there, that is where the School of Health is based, on level 6 there, just for any health students with us at the moment. And the Tauranga campus, so obviously it's one building with multiple floors. So for reference here, the hub, which we mentioned earlier, is on level 1. And then the higher floors will be where the teaching and lab spaces are. And we actually zip through that relatively quickly. So let's have a look at some questions. So the first question we've got here is, where could I find the lab sign up for your tutorial page? So that will be within the individual Moodle pages. Each individual paper will have its own portal within Moodle, and within that paper there will be information on how to sign up for the labs or tutorials. So you'll want to go to Moodle, and then within the individual papers, depending on the subject, the tutorial sign up might not be available yet. Sometimes they open it during the first week for those that are starting in week 2, but the science and engineering ones should all be available from now. So yeah, have a look into that, and if you're having any issue at all with it, get in touch with us via email is probably the easiest way. Yeah. So the next question is, if I cannot see any B papers on Moodle, what should I do? So there's a few different potential causes of this. The first is that you haven't fully completed your enrolment. That's the most likely outcome. So you should be able to view all that via the My Waikato section of the online system rather than Moodle. So if you go in there and it looks like, and it says that you're all enrolled, the papers should be in Moodle. So in that case, the likely issue is that the Moodle portal for the individual paper just hasn't been opened yet. So the Moodle portals are open at the discretion of the lecturer. So sometimes they're not open until the first week. Again, in the case of the science and engineering papers, that shouldn't be the case because the tutorial sign-up's already happening. So if the root cause seems to be that you're not enrolled, get in touch with us as soon as possible and we can help resolve that. If you are enrolled and the papers aren't in Moodle, give it a couple of days, but if it's not there if it's not there by tomorrow, get in touch as well and we can follow that one up for you. So we have another question. What if I can't attend a lab? So I suppose there's a couple of ways to interpret this one. If you can't attend an individual week of a lab, that would be a situation where you would just communicate with your tutor or lecturer. Often there can be alternate arrangements made on for short-term absences. If it's that you can't attend the lab at all, i.e. you're studying off campus, that will depend a little bit on the specifics of that paper, but you should get in touch with the lecturer of the paper in the first instance, and you should probably try to do that as soon as possible, just so we can have a bit of time to come to a resolution before next week starts. So the next question is Moodle where you organise your timetable? So there is a timetable builder on the website, which isn't necessarily within Moodle, but the difficulty we have at the moment is that so the system generated timetable always worked on the basis of lecture times, which in most years is very useful, but this year with the lecture content all being covered online and not necessarily live, i.e. at specific times, the lecture times in the timetable aren't necessarily hugely reliable. So what we would probably suggest in this case is checking how each individual paper is going to operate via their Moodle portal and then building, I suppose, a bespoke timetable from there. Because the automatic information that populates the timetable won't be particularly accurate at this point. So that is the questions I have listed here. We'll give it a couple of seconds if anyone else wanted to chuck something broader in. So if you have put a private question in that we haven't answered yet, we will get an answer to you before the end of today. So if there aren't any other questions, so a little Q&A one, is that something different?
I think we're trying to do options for student during remote learning.
Oh, so we had a couple there. So one's just come through. Are all lectures online or does it depend per paper? So the lecture content, so this is where we would make a distinction between lectures and tutorials. So the lecture content should all be online. Tutorials, there are some papers where the tutorials aren't available online. If this is the case, that will be communicated to you individually. So just keep an eye out for that. But all of the other papers, there should be options for on-campus tutorials and online versions, which does make the sign up sort of period, particularly important this time, because if you absolutely need to be in the online one, yeah, you should engage with that process as early as possible so it doesn't get full. If it did get full for any reason, we'd probably be able to work around it, but yeah, you'd be better off sort of getting that done quickly. So then there's another question. Got a lot of screen going here. So there's one from just asking about electives and what you can choose. So an elective, so the useful answer, I suppose, is that it can be anything at all, but the more complicated version of that answer is that it can be anything at all. So if you, yeah, provided you meet the prereqs for the individual papers, you can do anything as the electives. But this, again, this is where you could be looking at grouping the electives into a coherent sort of minor or second major, if your interests were all sort of grouped in one area. So there's one, is car parking available? So car parking is available on the Hamilton campus. It does cost. Off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly how much it costs. But yeah, there is plenty of parking available on campus, and you can either pay for a full trimester or individual day or individual week. And I think, oh no, there is one here. I'm waiting for my credit transfer result. Should I select paper now or wait for result being released? At this point, it would make sense to select the papers. So while I'm sure every effort's been made to get the credit transfer processed, yeah, getting the paper selection part of that process underway will definitely be beneficial, just so we're not sort of artificially delaying the start of your trimester, because the papers, provided the credit broadly looks okay, the papers can be approved prior to the credit formally being approved. So yeah, I would suggest getting papers in as soon as possible. So there's another one. Moodle is still saying this paper is not currently visible to students. If the semester has started, please contact your lecturer. For engineering papers, does that mean not all engineering papers are open yet? It would tend to indicate that yes. So I would suggest if it's just a specific paper, I would email that through to contact HECS, which was the email from one of the earlier slides. So it's contact-HECS, HECS, at waikato.ac.nz, and we'll be able to chase that up for you. And I think that might be, oh, there we go. If a student, so the next question is, if a student were to do all 4 major papers, like Compex 101, Compex 102, CSMAX 170, and Maths 135, would it be too much work for a new student for a semester? So this one's specifically referring to a computer science student. So the workload, we wouldn't think the workload was going to be too heavy, but the issue you would run into with that paper selection is that Compex 101 is the prerequisite for Compex 102, meaning that you have to complete Compex 101 before proceeding into Compex 102. So yeah, in that particular version of paper selection, we would be looking to replace Compex 102 with something else. Either a field of the degree paper or an elective. Yeah. But that's actually potentially a good jumping off point just to briefly discuss how workload works. So, so you'll hear things like full-time study, part-time study. The full-time or part-time or just the workload is based on points, which obviously correlate to papers, but the number of points in a paper indicates the total amount of work required. So it's not like for computer science papers is a heavier workload than for psychology papers, for instance. 60 points roughly equates to 60 points. The only variability there would be at sort of an individual basis. You might find one subject more difficult than another kind of thing, but 60 points is effectively an equivalent workload to 60 points. Yeah, so that's that question there. We've still got some flying through. So one is my enrolment status enrolled, but I cannot see any papers. Where do I have to contact? So again, I would suggest contact HECS, so contact-HECS@waikato.ac.nz, and we'll be able to follow that up. Depending on how recently you completed your enrolment, there might be a bit of a system delay in the papers becoming available, but if you've been enrolled for sort of more than half a day, and the Moodle portals are available, you should have access to them by now. So it might just be that the papers for that particular enrolment, the Moodle portal, haven't been opened yet. That's quite common, particularly for the higher level papers, so the postgrad papers, where tutorial and lab sign up is less intensive, I suppose. But again, if you had any questions or you thought the delay was too long, get in touch with us via contact HECS. Cool. I think that is all the questions. So it has been lovely talking to you all this morning. And again, get in touch with us if you have any questions at all. But yeah, otherwise, we will hopefully look forward to helping you out through the coming months and years. All right, see ya.